Major changes imminent. Report reveals shocking Steelers update as the Steelers look to change their defense for the better. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest reports and analysis regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. As the Steelers are continuing to grow and get better on defense, they are looking to make some major changes. Before we get into the latest reports, if you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, just click that subscribe button down below. We are trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to make some major changes along the defensive line. Obviously, we have made some big acquisitions this offseason, acquiring guys like Derek Harmon in the first round, Yaha Black later on in the draft, Jack Sawyer in the fourth round out of Ohio State, Captain Jack, Juan Thornhill, re-locked down Sean Elliott to a long-term deal. Signed a guy like Malik Harrison, who's going to come in there and be our third middle linebacker beside Cole Holcomb, Peyton Wilson, and Patrick Queen. So, we got a lot of things to look forward to on our defense, a lot of dogs, a lot of guys that are going to only look to improve as we go into next season. But, some major changes are going to happen along the defensive line. If we look back to last year, in those final last couple games, those last 5 games where the Steelers just kind of looked like they were collapsing, it really just broke down to how we were playing up front. It all starts with how you play up front. If we look at teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, they got some big and really talented offensive linemen as well as some big and talented defensive linemen. It starts up front. If you can win the football game up front, you're going to win, the rest of the game. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to try to follow suit. Obviously, we still have a young and growing offensive line, but I do think that we will figure it out this year, barring, any injuries. But if we look at the defensive line, if we look back in the last year, we were kind of doing the same thing, expecting different results. But as we go into this year, I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are planning to move the guys around and, change up the defensive front a little. So, according to some reports, the Steelers have continued to shift their fronts around early on. Thursday, it was TJ Watt moving around the formation, but on Fridays, the Steelers saw TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith flip sides multiple times, with Highsmith working over the B gap on one play too, and this theme continued into Saturday. So, obviously we just locked down TJ Watt, best defensive player in the league, locked him down to a full-year deal. He's getting paid $41 million a year, but, he does deserve this contract since coming in the league in 2017. This guy has only dominated on the defensive side of the football. He's also been a role model player off the field, and, he's only continued to prove and become the best defensive player in the league. A few years ago, this dude had 22 and a half sacks, should have been 23 and a half, but, the NFL loves to bring Pittsburgh Steelers down. Everyone wants to see us win. So they did not count that last sack against Tyler Huntley. But anyways, this guy's very talented, and unfortunately last year we kind of kept him in that same position, and there was a few games where he kind of disappeared off the field. If we look at games like the Commanders, he recorded 0 stats across the board, and if we even look at the playoff game against the Ravens, TJ Watt had 0 stats and did have to leave the game early with an injury. So, we're paying this guy enough money to play for our team. He's shown in the past he's dominant and he can play for our football team and be a leader for our football team, but we will have to see this year how he fares when we do move him around on the defensive line. Obviously, when he came into the league, I do believe TJ Watt started as a right outside linebacker alongside, James Harrison and Bud Dupree playing that left outside linebacker spot. And then when he did go into his second year, the Steelers did ultimately move him to the left outside linebacker spot, where he continued to have success, racked up 13 sacks his sophomore season. But sometimes change is good and change is for the better. So TJ Watt, he could look to move back to that right outside linebacker position here and there. Maybe line him up as a middle linebacker here and there, have him blitz up that A gap. But we will have to wait and see. He's very talented. We're paying him enough money. So I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are making a lot of different moves on the defensive side of football. Another guy that we can talk about on the defensive side of the football that Steelers will move around is a guy like Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, we did acquire him to be our nickel corner, or, just a starting corner that's going to follow around their team's best receiver, but I do also think that the Steelers will evidently move him to that safety position. Whether that will be this year, whether that will be next year, I do think he will at least get some playing time at that safety position this year. I think as he does move into that later stage of the career, he could make a full position change to that safety position, like a guy like Charles Woodson, like a guy like Rod Woodson. Two of the guys that Jalen Ramsey have said in the past are some of his favorite football players, are some of his role models. So, whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers will permanently move him to safety, he's another guy to look out for that they will move around. And I really do like this new idea of moving players around on the defensive side. It really just will allow the Pittsburgh Steelers to get the best out of each individual player on the defensive side of the football. Obviously, it's not a talent issue. We got a ton of first-round picks, ton of future Hall of Famers on our defense. It's really, I think, just coming down to that schematics, and communication issues were another issue that the Pittsburgh Steelers dealt with last year, which could have played a role in the Pittsburgh Steelers shipping over Minkah Fitzpatrick to the Dolphins. But I think just schematic-wise, I think this is something that the Pittsburgh Steelers can really benefit for as they do move around some of these guys on the defensive side of the football. Obviously, another guy the Steelers could look to move around is our captain, our seasoned veteran, Cameron Heyward. Obviously, he primarily plays that defensive tackle position, but the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to move around on that defensive line, maybe throw him at that defensive end position, maybe even throw him at that outside linebacker position if they need to, a few different plays. This is a guy that he can play anywhere on the defensive line. He can, bat down the football. I do believe he had, if not the most, one of the most passive batted down last year at that defensive lineman position, and he's only continued to get better with age. He's, I believe, 35 now, but he's still looking great. Just coming off a 10-sack season, I believe, something around that. And he's only looking better with age, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have only added more and more talent to the roster. We've added young guys like Jack Sawyer, who kind of a hybrid. You can play him at that defensive end position, but also play him at the outside linebacker position. We add a guy like, like I said before, Malik Harrison, who maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe want to line out at that outside linebacker position here and there. He is a scrappy player coming out of Ohio State. He is kind of versatile, so if the Pittsburgh Steelers are just desperate to get him on the field, they could look to maybe move him to the outside linebacker position here and there. And obviously we have, our guy in Alex Highsmith, who may tend to forget about, but, this guy is also a Pro Bowl caliber player that, can be very dominant on whatever position you do put him at. He primarily plays at that right outside linebacker position, but that 1 year when TJ Watt did go down with injury, he did step up, play that left outside linebacker position, had a ton of success. So I'm excited what the Steelers will do this season, how they will move around their pieces on the defense. But, unfortunately, that is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers.